quietest revolution begins in the mind of a single person who decides to change. Not tomorrow, not someday, but now. Is your life everything you imagined it would be? Or have you settled into patterns that no longer serve your highest potential? The transformation you seek doesn't require grand gestures or complete life upheavals. True change, lasting change, comes from the small actions you perform daily with unwavering consistency. The smallest actions performed with complete presence contain the seeds of the greatest transformation. This truth contradicts everything our hurried world teaches us. We are conditioned to believe that meaningful change requires dramatic action, quitting jobs, moving cities, or making bold declarations. Yet the ancient wisdom traditions have always known what modern science now confirms: our lives are shaped not by occasional bold moves, but by the small habits we practice every day. Most people live their entire lives reacting to circumstances, trapped in patterns they established years or even decades ago. They wake each morning already behind, already anxious, already continuing the story from yesterday. And so another day passes, indistinguishable from the thousands before it. You need not continue this cycle. The mind that created your current circumstances cannot be the mind that transforms them. You must first become still enough to observe yourself without judgment. Only then can you begin to make the subtle shifts that will redirect the entire course of your existence. Consider the power of water. It appears weak and yielding, yet given enough time it carves canyons through solid rock. Not through force, but through consistent, patient action. Your habits work the same way, gradually shaping the landscape of your life, whether you're conscious of them or not. What if you could harness this power intentionally? The 10 habits I will share with you are not complex. They require no special equipment, no expensive courses, no radical lifestyle changes. What they do require is something far more valuable and increasingly rare: your full attention. These practices have been refined across centuries by those who understood that mastering oneself is the only true form of power. They have been taught in monasteries and training halls, passed from teacher to student through countless generations. They have survived because they work, not immediately, but inevitably. Most seek transformation but become discouraged when results don't appear quickly enough. They jump from technique to technique, philosophy to philosophy, never staying with any practice long enough to reap its benefits. They confuse activity with progress, motion with transformation. The way of the wise is different. The wise understand that transformation occurs in the space between effort and surrender. They know that consistent small actions performed with proper intention gradually reprogram the deepest patterns of mind and behavior. When you plant a bamboo seed, nothing appears to happen for years. The farmer who gives up after a season or two will never see growth. Yet beneath the surface, an elaborate root system is forming. When the bamboo finally emerges, it can grow up to 3 feet in a single day. This apparent overnight success was years in the making. Your transformation will follow the same pattern. The challenge we face is not lack of knowledge. We drown in information while starving for wisdom and application. The true challenge is consistency, maintaining practices long enough for them to remake us from within. Consider how your current habits formed. You did not consciously choose most of them. They emerged gradually through repetition. Some serve you well, others limit your potential. What if you could consciously cultivate habits that expand rather than contract your possibilities? The mind follows the pattern of its most frequent thoughts and actions. This is why the warrior trains the same movements thousands of times, not to prepare for 1,000 different fights, but so the body responds correctly, even when the mind is overwhelmed. You must become equally intentional about training your mind. When we examine the lives of those who have achieved mastery in any domain, from martial arts to music, meditation to mathematics, we find the same fundamental qualities: presence, patience, and unwavering commitment to small, consistent practice. These qualities do not come naturally in a world engineered to fragment your attention. You must cultivate them deliberately, against the current of a society that values speed over depth, quantity over quality, noise over silence. The 10 habits I will share with you form a complete system for reclaiming your attention and redirecting it toward what truly matters. Each builds upon the others, creating a foundation for authentic transformation. Before we begin this journey together, you must understand 3 essential principles. First, true power comes not from controlling external circumstances, but from mastering your internal state. When you learn to maintain equanimity regardless of what happens around you, you possess a strength that cannot be taken away. Second, all lasting change begins with awareness. You cannot transform what you do not first acknowledge. Many live their entire lives without truly seeing themselves as they are. The practices I will share will first help you see clearly, then help you transform what you see. Third, transformation is not linear. There will be periods of apparent stagnation followed by quantum leaps in awareness. Trust the process, especially when results are not immediately visible. The 10 habits work together as a system, each reinforcing the others. While you may be tempted to choose only those that appeal to you, I encourage you to adopt all 10, even those that seem challenging or uncomfortable. Often the practices we resist most are precisely those we need most urgently. Morning arrives, you open your eyes. In this first moment lies a precious opportunity, most squander. Before thoughts of yesterday's problems or today's responsibilities flood in, there exists a brief window of pure potential. The first habit begins by extending this window, creating space for intention rather than reaction. Most begin their day by immediately filling their minds with information and stimulation, checking messages, scrolling through updates, planning activities. They surrender their mental sovereignty before even rising from bed. The wise begin differently. They understand that how you start your day largely determines its quality. They know that the mind, like water, settles into clarity when allowed to be still. They recognize that intentionally creating space before activity sets a foundation for everything that follows. The first moments after waking represent a unique threshold between unconscious and conscious states. Your brain waves are transitioning from theta to alpha patterns. In this liminal space, the mind is uniquely receptive. What you introduce here will influence your entire day. Rather than immediately engaging with external demands, remain still. Feel your body's weight against the bed. Notice your breath moving in and out. Observe the quality of light in the room. Allow yourself to simply be present, without reaching for anything. In these moments of stillness, you reclaim sovereignty over your attention. You assert that your consciousness belongs first to yourself, not to the demands of others. This seemingly small act of mental independence forms the foundation for all that follows. As this practice deepens, you'll discover an important truth. There is a fundamental difference between you and the thoughts that arise in your awareness. You are not your thoughts. You are the consciousness in which thoughts appear. This distinction between the thinker and the thought is perhaps the most liberating realization possible. It means you need not believe everything your mind tells you. You can observe thoughts without being controlled by them. Most people never make this distinction. They remain identified with their mental content, believing I am angry rather than I notice anger arising. This subtle shift in perspective changes everything. It creates space between stimulus and response, space in which freedom exists, the morning stillness practice gradually expands this space. Each day you strengthen your capacity to observe rather than identify with mental and emotional states. This single shift has profound implications for every aspect of your life. When challenges arise, as they inevitably will, you'll find yourself responding from a place of clarity rather than reactivity. You'll make choices aligned with your deepest values rather than momentary impulses. You'll recognize emotional storms for what they are, temporary weather patterns in consciousness, not defining aspects of your identity. As weeks pass, something remarkable occurs. The quality of awareness you cultivate in the morning begins to extend throughout your day. You catch yourself earlier when falling into unhelpful patterns. You notice beauty you previously overlooked. You experience more frequent moments of spontaneous gratitude. This is not coincidence. By training your attention each morning, you gradually transform your relationship with every experience. The practice is simple but profound. Wake, attend, nothing to achieve, nowhere to go. Just presence claimed intentionally before the world makes its countless demands. In ancient training traditions, students often began with similar practices. Before learning techniques or philosophies, they learned to be still. Not because stillness itself was the goal, but because all meaningful action springs from a foundation of clear awareness. Consider the archer who draws the bow. Before releasing the arrow, there is a moment of complete stillness. In this lies the difference between mastery and mediocrity. The skilled archer doesn't rush this moment. They inhabit it fully, knowing their aim depends on this quality of attention. Your life requires the same quality of attention. Each action, each decision represents an arrow released toward some target. The stillness you cultivate each morning ensures these arrows fly true, aligned with your deepest intentions rather than scattered by distraction or habit. The morning practice need not be lengthy. Even 3 minutes of intentional stillness will begin to shift your relationship with your mind. As the practice becomes familiar, you may naturally extend it. The duration matters less than the quality of attention you bring. Some resist this practice, believing they don't have time. Yet the clarity it provides actually creates time by eliminating wasted mental energy. When your mind is clear, decisions come more easily. Tasks require less effort. Distractions lose their power to derail you. Others resist because sitting with themselves is uncomfortable. The mind, accustomed to constant stimulation, initially rebels against stillness. Restlessness, boredom, or anxiety may arise. This discomfort is not a sign of failure but of necessity. It reveals how dependent you've become on external stimulation, how unaccustomed to being simply present. Stay with this discomfort. Watch it rise and fall. Don't try to fix or change it. This capacity to be present with what is without immediately trying to escape or alter it forms the core of emotional maturity. As the days pass, this practice becomes not an obligation but a sanctuary. You begin to value these moments of stillness, to protect them from encroachment. You discover that beginning your day from centered awareness rather than fragmented reactivity changes everything that follows. The morning stillness practice prepares the foundation for the second habit, conscious breathing throughout your day. The breath serves as an anchor for awareness, a bridge between mind and body, a tool for self-regulation available in every circumstance. Most people breathe without awareness, taking approximately 20,000 breaths each day while noticing perhaps none of them. This unconscious breathing reflects and reinforces unconscious living. When you bring attention to this most basic life process, you begin reclaiming consciousness in all areas. The breath serves as an anchor for awareness, a bridge between mind and body, a tool for self-regulation available in every circumstance. Most people breathe without awareness, taking approximately 20,000 breaths each day while noticing perhaps none of them. This unconscious breathing reflects and reinforces unconscious living. When you bring attention to this most basic life process, you begin reclaiming consciousness in all areas. Your breath is the most accessible doorway to the present moment. While the mind constantly travels to past and future, the breath exists only now. It cannot be taken in advance or saved for later. Each breath offers a fresh opportunity to return to the present, the only place where transformation is possible. Consider this simple practice 3 times each day, whatever you're doing. Close your eyes if possible. Take 5 slow, deliberate breaths, feeling the complete cycle of inhalation and exhalation. Notice the subtle sensations, the slight coolness as air enters your nostrils, the gentle expansion of your ribcage, the warming of the breath as you exhale. This practice requires less than 1 minute, yet its effects ripple through your entire system. Your heart rate slows, stress hormones decrease, mental chatter quiets. You return to the task at hand with renewed clarity and presence. Choose specific transition moments for this practice, perhaps before meals, when moving between locations, or before important conversations. These natural boundaries in your day become reminders to return to conscious breathing. As this habit strengthens, you'll notice something remarkable. The breath becomes a trusted ally in challenging situations. When anger arises, a few conscious breaths create space between trigger and reaction. When anxiety threatens to overwhelm, attending to the breath grounds you in physical sensation rather than catastrophic thinking. The ancient teachers understood this power. They recognized the breath as more than mere biological function. It is the visible manifestation of life force itself. By consciously working with the breath, you learn to regulate your internal state rather than being governed by external circumstances. Notice how your breathing changes with different emotional states. When anxious, the breath becomes shallow and rapid. When at peace, it flows deep and slow. This relationship works in both directions. Emotions affect breathing, but breathing also affects emotions. By intentionally shifting your breathing pattern, you can influence your mental and emotional state. During moments of stress, most people unknowingly hold their breath or breathe only in the upper chest. This pattern activates the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response, even when no physical danger exists. Conscious breathing interrupts this cycle, engaging the parasympathetic system and returning the body to a state of balanced functioning. The consistent practice of conscious breathing gradually rewires your nervous system. You become less reactive, more responsive. The gap between stimulus and response widens. You find yourself able to maintain equanimity in situations that once triggered automatic reactions. Consider the metaphor of a mountain lake. When wind blows across its surface, waves form and clarity is lost. The depths remain undisturbed, but they cannot be seen. Similarly, when your mind is agitated, its fundamental clarity and stillness become obscured. Conscious breathing calms these surface disturbances, allowing your natural wisdom to become visible again. Some resist this practice because it seems too simple. They seek complex techniques, forgetting that the most powerful practices are often the most elemental. Others resist because slowing down, even briefly, feels uncomfortable in a world that rewards constant activity. Trust that these moments of conscious breathing actually create more time by enhancing the quality of your attention. As days pass, you may find yourself naturally remembering to breathe consciously during challenging moments. What began as a scheduled practice becomes an intuitive response.
Your system learns that returning to the breath provides immediate access to a more centered state. The breath bridges conscious and unconscious processes within you. It can be controlled deliberately, yet it continues without conscious direction. This dual nature makes it the perfect tool for expanding awareness into typically unconscious areas of your life. As the day unfolds, you move through countless activities, encounters, and environments. The conscious breathing practice serves as a thread connecting these diverse experiences, maintaining continuity of awareness regardless of external circumstances.
The power of this practice lies in its availability. No matter where you are, what you're doing, or who you're with, your breath remains accessible. No special equipment or private space required. This universal availability means no situation can prevent you from returning to centered awareness. Gradually expand this practice beyond the scheduled moments. While walking, notice the relationship between your steps and your breath. While listening to others, feel the subtle movement of your breathing. While working, allow your breath to remain deep and relaxed rather than becoming tense and shallow. This growing awareness of your breath throughout the day becomes a barometer for your internal state. When the breath becomes irregular or constrained, it signals that something requires attention. Perhaps you've become caught in unhelpful thinking, or tension is accumulating in your body. The breath reveals these patterns before they escalate into problems. By evening, the cumulative effect of conscious breathing throughout your day becomes apparent. Your mind is clearer, your emotions more balanced, your body less tense. You've maintained a higher quality of presence throughout the day's activities rather than being swept along by momentum and habit. This sets the foundation for the third habit, the evening reflection ritual, where the morning practice creates intention and the breathing practice maintains awareness. The evening ritual integrates experiences and prepares for renewal. Most end their day as unconsciously as they began it, checking messages, watching entertainment, falling asleep with minds still racing. They miss the opportunity to properly close one day before beginning another, carrying unresolved matters forward until they accumulate into chronic distress. The wise understand that proper endings are as important as proper beginnings. They know that reflecting on the day's experiences without judgment or overthinking allows the mind to process, integrate, and release, preventing the buildup of psychological residue. Before sleep, create a brief period of reflection. Sit quietly in a dimly lit space. Close your eyes. Allow the events of the day to arise naturally in your awareness. Don't analyze or judge, simply witness what appears. Notice moments of alignment with your values and intentions. Notice instances where you lost presence. Hold both with the same gentle attention. This practice differs from rumination or self-criticism. You aren't rehashing events or generating stories about what happened. You're simply allowing experiences to complete themselves in your awareness, acknowledging what occurred without elaboration or judgment. 3 questions can guide this reflection. What am I grateful for today? What did I learn today? What will I release before sleeping? The gratitude question directs your attention toward the positive aspects of your experience, counterbalancing the mind's natural tendency to focus on problems and shortcomings. Even on difficult days, there are always moments worthy of appreciation, perhaps as simple as a warm meal, a moment of connection, or your own perseverance through challenges. The learning question extracts value from all experiences, transforming even mistakes and difficulties into sources of growth. Every interaction, every challenge, every surprise contains information about yourself and the world. By consciously recognizing these lessons, you accelerate your development and prevent the same situations from recurring endlessly. The release question acknowledges that certain experiences, thoughts, or emotions need not be carried forward. Perhaps someone spoke harshly to you. Perhaps you made a mistake. Perhaps a situation didn't unfold as you hoped. Ask yourself, is carrying this forward useful? If not, consciously release it, understanding that holding on creates suffering while letting go creates space for new possibilities. Some find it helpful to externalize this release symbolically, perhaps writing down what you're releasing and then burning the paper, or visualizing the thought or emotion dissolving into light. These rituals help the mind recognize that you're making a conscious choice to set something down rather than carrying it with you. The evening reflection need not be lengthy, 10 minutes is sufficient. What matters is the quality of attention you bring to it. Approach with curiosity rather than judgment, openness rather than analysis. You're not trying to fix or solve anything, merely to witness and acknowledge. As this practice develops, you'll notice your sleep improving. The mind, having been given space to process the day's experiences, can more easily enter the restorative states necessary for deep rest. You'll wake feeling genuinely renewed rather than merely rested. You'll also notice greater continuity between days. Rather than each morning feeling like an arbitrary new beginning, you'll sense the coherent progression of your life journey. Intentions set in the morning, maintained through conscious breathing during the day and integrated through evening reflection, create a virtuous cycle of expanding awareness. Some resist this practice because they believe they don't have the time or energy at day's end. Yet the clarity and closure it provides actually creates energy by preventing the accumulation of unprocessed experiences. Others resist because they're uncomfortable being alone with their thoughts. This discomfort signals the necessity of the practice rather than its futility. The evening reflection also provides valuable information about your day. Patterns become visible that might otherwise remain hidden. Perhaps you notice that certain environments consistently drain your energy. Perhaps certain relationships trigger particular emotional responses. Perhaps specific times of day are especially productive or challenging. This growing self-knowledge allows for increasingly conscious choices. Consider that your mind processes experiences while you sleep, incorporating them into your understanding of yourself and the world. The evening reflection practice ensures that what gets processed is the actual experience rather than elaborate stories about what happened. This distinction prevents the reinforcement of unhelpful narratives that can distort your perception over time. As weeks pass, the cumulative effect of these three habits, morning stillness, conscious breathing, and evening reflection, becomes increasingly apparent. You'll find yourself less reactive, more present, more aware of choices that previously seemed automatic. You'll notice subtle shifts in how you respond to challenges and opportunities alike. Where once you might have been swept along by circumstance, you now maintain a clearer sense of intention and direction. Where once emotions might have overwhelmed your awareness, you now recognize them as temporary conditions rather than defining realities. Where once you might have repeated the same patterns day after day, you now notice and adjust course when necessary. These changes aren't dramatic or sudden, they emerge gradually through consistent practice. Like water shaping stone, these simple daily habits reshape your consciousness over time. The transformation is inexorable, though its pace may seem imperceptible on any given day. The essence of these first three habits lies in a fundamental shift of relationship with yourself. Rather than living from the outside in, reacting to external demands and stimuli, you begin living from the inside out, responding from a foundation of clear awareness and intention.
Most never make this shift. They remain at the mercy of circumstances, experiencing life as something that happens to them rather than something they consciously create and shape. Their attention remains captured by external events, leaving little capacity to notice their own patterns or make different choices. You are choosing another way. The morning stillness grounds you in sovereignty over your attention. The conscious breathing maintains this sovereignty throughout the day's activities. The evening reflection integrates experiences to prevent accumulation of psychological burdens. Together, these practices establish a new foundation for all other aspects of your life. As these habits strengthen, you naturally become more discerning about how you direct your attention and energy. You begin to recognize which activities, environments, and relationships nourish your highest potential and which deplete or diminish you. This discernment leads naturally to the next 3 habits, where the first 3 habits establish your relationship with yourself. The next 3 govern your interaction with the world around you. They address how you receive and process information, how you listen and communicate with others, and how you respond to the inevitable challenges life presents. The 4th habit begins with a radical reassessment of your relationship with information and technology. In an age of unprecedented access to content and constant connectivity,
Maintaining sovereignty over your attention requires deliberate boundaries and conscious choices about what you allow into your awareness. The 4th habit concerns your relationship with information and technology. In an age of unprecedented connectivity, maintaining sovereignty over your attention requires deliberate boundaries and conscious choices about what you allow into your awareness. What enters your mind shapes your thoughts. What shapes your thoughts determines your actions. What determines your actions creates your life. Yet most people allow virtually anything into their mental space without discrimination or protection. Consider your attention as your most precious resource, more valuable than time, more essential than money. Where attention goes, energy flows. What you consistently attend to grows stronger in your awareness. This principle operates whether your attention is given consciously or unconsciously, whether to worthy or unworthy objects. The habit of mindful consumption applies to all information sources, conversations, reading material, entertainment, news, and technology. It begins with a simple question: does this content expand or contract my consciousness? Does it elevate or diminish my awareness? Most information today is designed not to enlighten, but to capture and hold attention. It often appeals to fear, outrage, vanity, or insecurity, the lower aspects of human nature. Consuming such content regularly shapes your perception toward these same qualities, training your mind to see threat, conflict, and inadequacy everywhere. The alternative is selective consumption. This doesn't mean avoiding reality or creating an artificial bubble. It means choosing information sources that inform without manipulating, that present reality without distortion, that offer solutions rather than merely highlighting problems. Begin by creating boundaries around your morning and evening. The first hour after waking and the last hour before sleeping are especially important. During these transitional states, the mind is particularly receptive and vulnerable. What you consume during these times has disproportionate impact on your consciousness. Keep all screens and unnecessary information sources away during these periods. Instead, use this time for the stillness and reflection practices we've discussed. Allow your mind to establish its own rhythm and focus before introducing external input. Throughout the day, practice intentional time blocks for different types of information engagement. Rather than constantly switching between tasks and information sources, dedicate specific periods for news consumption, communication, creative work, and entertainment. This boundary setting prevents the fragmentation of attention that characterizes modern life. When consuming any content, whether articles, conversations, or entertainment, cultivate awareness of how it affects your mental and emotional state. Notice when content triggers fear, anger, envy, or insecurity. Notice also when it inspires compassion, creativity, clarity, or calmness. This awareness alone will naturally shift your preferences toward more valuable information sources. You need not force this change. Simply noticing the effects of different content on your consciousness will guide your choices. The mind naturally moves away from what causes suffering when it clearly recognizes the connection. Especially notice the effects of news consumption. While staying informed about the world is valuable, the way most news is presented, emphasizing threat, conflict, and sensation, activates the stress response in ways not helpful for clear thinking or well-being. Consider getting your news from sources that provide context and depth, rather than merely triggering emotional reactions. Apply similar awareness to your technology use. Notice how different applications and devices affect your mental state, energy level, and quality of attention. Some uses of technology expand capabilities and connections in valuable ways. Others fragment attention and create unnecessary stress or comparison. Many unconsciously check their devices dozens or even hundreds of times daily, not from necessity but from habit and anxiety. Each check interrupts focused attention and resets the brain's ability to concentrate deeply. Consider scheduling specific times to check messages and notifications rather than responding to each alert as it arrives. The principles of mindful consumption apply equally to what enters through all senses. What you see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. The environments you inhabit, the food you eat, the sounds that surround you, all form part of your mental diet and influence your consciousness accordingly. Some resist this practice because they fear missing out on important information or social connection. Yet the mind that constantly seeks more information rarely integrates what it already knows. True understanding requires space for reflection and assimilation, not merely accumulation of facts and perspectives. Others resist because modern culture normalizes constant connectivity and information consumption. Swimming against this current requires conviction that another way exists, a way that values depth over breadth, quality over quantity, wisdom over mere information. As this habit strengthens, you'll notice increased mental clarity and emotional stability. The mind, no longer constantly bombarded with conflicting messages and stimuli, can settle into its natural state of alert tranquility. You'll find yourself able to think more original thoughts rather than merely recycling others' ideas and perspectives. The fifth habit builds upon this foundation of selective consumption to address how you engage with others, the way of deep listening. Most conversations fail to create genuine understanding because participants are more concerned with being heard than with hearing. More focused on formulating responses than on receiving what's being expressed. True listening is rare and revolutionary. It requires temporarily setting aside your own thoughts, opinions, and agenda to fully receive another's expression. This receptivity creates space for authentic connection and understanding that superficial exchanges cannot achieve. When others speak, most listen only partially. Their minds simultaneously judge what's being said, relate it to their own experience, and prepare counter-arguments or responses. This divided attention prevents genuine receipt of the message and the connection that might otherwise occur. Practice listening with your full being, not just ears and intellect but also heart and intuition. Notice the words being spoken but also the tone, the emotional quality, the energy behind the expression. Notice what remains unspoken, the hesitations, the areas carefully avoided.
Begin this practice with those closest to you. When a loved one speaks, give them your complete attention. Put aside other activities. Turn toward them physically. Make eye contact if culturally appropriate. Resist the urge to interrupt or immediately respond. Allow their complete expression before formulating your reply. This quality of attention is a profound gift in a distracted world. When someone feels truly heard, perhaps for the first time, the impact can be transformative. Defenses lower, truth emerges, connection deepens. Issues that seemed intractable often resolve naturally when addressed with this quality of presence. Extend this practice to all conversations throughout your day. Notice how often you speak not from necessity but from habit, discomfort with silence, or desire to assert your perspective. Notice how rarely you listen with the intention to understand rather than to respond. Notice how the quality of your attention affects the quality of exchange that occurs. Deep listening applies not only to others but also to yourself. Listen to the subtle signals from your body, emotions, and intuition with the same quality of receptive attention. These internal messages often contain wisdom that the rational mind alone cannot access. Some resist this practice because they fear losing control of conversations or because they identify strongly with their own opinions and perspectives. Others resist because truly receiving another's expression sometimes requires witnessing pain or difficulty without immediately trying to fix or solve it. Yet this capacity to be present with what is without rushing to change it forms the foundation of all genuine connection.
As this habit strengthens, you will notice relationships deepening and conflicts diminishing. Communication becomes more efficient, requiring fewer words because each word is fully received. You gain access to perspectives and understandings that were previously obscured by your own mental activity. Your presence becomes a healing force in others' lives simply through the quality of attention you offer. The sixth habit builds naturally upon the foundation of selective consumption and deep listening, the art of conscious response. Where most react automatically to circumstances based on conditioning and habit, you can learn to create space between stimulus and response, space in which freedom and choice exist. Notice the difference. Reaction is automatic, unconscious, and often regretted later. Response is chosen, conscious, and aligned with your deepest values. Reaction comes from the past, from conditioning, trauma, or habit. Response emerges from present awareness and future intention. Most live predominantly in reaction mode, their words and actions determined more by circumstances than by conscious choice. Something happens, and they react almost instantly, with little or no space for consideration. This pattern creates the sense of being controlled by external events rather than directing one's own life. The art of conscious response begins with recognizing reactive patterns. Notice when you feel compelled to speak or act immediately. Notice when emotions arise strongly in response to triggers. Notice the physical sensations that accompany reactivity, perhaps tension in the chest, throat, or shoulders, perhaps a flush of heat, perhaps a surge of energy. When you notice these signals, one conscious breath creates enough space to interrupt automatic patterns. In this lies your power to choose rather than merely react. This doesn't mean suppressing authentic emotion or response. It means ensuring that what you express comes from your whole being, not merely from conditioning. Some situations do require immediate action. Even here, those who have practiced conscious response find themselves able to act swiftly yet deliberately, responding to what the moment actually requires rather than to projections or assumptions. Practice this art especially in challenging circumstances, when criticized, when plans go awry, when others act unconsciously. These difficult moments offer the greatest opportunity for growth and the clearest demonstration of your developing mastery. When someone speaks harshly, the untrained mind immediately generates defense or counter-attack. The trained mind recognizes the reaction arising and chooses a response that serves the highest good rather than merely protecting the ego. This might mean setting a clear boundary, offering compassion, or simply remaining silent until clarity emerges. When expectations are disappointed, the untrained mind generates stories of victimhood or blame. The trained mind acknowledges the disappointment without elaboration, learns what can be learned, and redirects attention toward constructive possibilities rather than fixating on what went wrong. The gap between stimulus and response widens with practice. What begins as a gradually extends into a spacious awareness in which multiple possibilities become visible. Options that would have remained hidden in reactivity become apparent. Creative solutions emerge that serve all involved rather than merely defending your position. This practice requires courage, the willingness to experience discomfort rather than immediately reacting to eliminate it. When anger, fear, or hurt arises, the automatic tendency is to discharge these feelings through expression or action. Holding these energies in aware presence, neither suppressing nor indulging them, requires strength and skill. As this habit strengthens, you'll notice yourself responding more skillfully in all situations. Where once you might have created unnecessary conflict through reactivity, you now navigate challenging circumstances with grace and effectiveness. Where once you might have spoken words later regretted, you now communicate with precision and care. Where once you might have been swept along by others' unconsciousness, you now maintain your center regardless of external conditions. The principles in these three habits, mindful consumption, deep listening, and conscious response, work together to transform your relationship with the world around you. Where the first three habits established sovereignty over your internal state, these next three establish sovereignty over your interactions and exchanges. Together, these 6 habits create a foundation of awareness and intentionality upon which the remaining 4 habits will build. The first group addressed your relationship with yourself. The second group addressed your relationship with information and other people. The final group will address your relationship with your physical body, challenges, solitude, and service to others. As these first 6 habits strengthen through consistent practice, you'll notice fundamental shifts in your experience. The mind becomes clearer, less cluttered with unnecessary thoughts and information. Emotions become more balanced, less subject to external triggers and manipulation. Relationships become more authentic, less dominated by unconscious patterns and misunderstandings. These changes emerge not through force or will but through consistent attention to small daily practices. Like water gradually reshaping stone, these habits transform your consciousness over time, not by adding something new but by revealing what was always present beneath layers of conditioning and habit. The 7th habit addresses your relationship with the physical dimension of existence, physical awareness integration. While many spiritual traditions emphasize transcendence of physical limitations, true mastery requires full embodiment rather than escape from physicality. The 7th habit addresses your relationship with the physical dimension of existence, physical awareness integration. While many spiritual traditions emphasize transcendence of physical limitations, true mastery requires full embodiment rather than escape from physicality. Your body is not merely a vehicle for your consciousness, it is the very expression of consciousness in material form. The ancient wisdom teachings recognized no separation between mind and body. They understood that physical practices develop mental qualities and mental practices influence physical functioning. Most people live largely disconnected from their bodies, aware of physical sensations only when they become impossible to ignore through pain, illness, or intense pleasure. They treat the body as a servant rather than a partner, pushing it beyond its natural limits, then wondering why it eventually rebels through dysfunction or disease.
Physical awareness integration begins with simple attention to posture. How you hold your body directly influences your mental and emotional state. When the spine is properly aligned, energy flows more freely. When the shoulders are relaxed rather than tense, the mind becomes more open. When the breath moves deeply into the abdomen rather than remaining shallow in the chest, the nervous system calms. 3 times each day, take a moment to scan your body systematically, from feet to head. Notice areas of tension, discomfort, or numbness. Notice also areas of ease, strength, and vitality. This awareness alone often initiates self-regulation as the body begins to release unnecessary tension once it's been consciously recognized. Physical movement practice forms another essential component of this habit. This need not mean strenuous exercise, though that has its place for some, but rather movement performed with complete attention. Walking, stretching, traditional practices like Tai Chi or yoga, or even household activities can serve equally well when approached with proper awareness. The key lies not in the particular form of movement but in the quality of attention you bring to it. Move slowly enough to notice subtle sensations. Feel the weight shifting between your feet as you walk. Notice the precise moment when a muscle reaches its comfortable stretch limit. Observe the coordination of breath with movement. This attentive movement practice trains the mind as powerfully as any seated meditation. It develops presence, patience, and precision. It strengthens the neural connections between awareness and action, gradually extending conscious control into areas typically governed by habit or unconscious patterns. Proper rest forms the third component of physical awareness integration. The body requires periods of complete relaxation to regenerate and rebalance. In a culture that celebrates constant activity and productivity, deliberate rest becomes a revolutionary act. Create boundaries around sleep, protecting it from encroachment by work or entertainment. Establish a consistent sleep schedule that aligns with natural circadian rhythms. Learn to distinguish between genuine tiredness that requires rest and the temporary energy fluctuations that can be moved through with gentle persistence. Some resist this habit because they've learned to distrust or ignore the body's signals. Years of overriding natural rhythms create disconnection that seems normal because it's familiar. Others resist because they equate physical awareness with weakness or self-indulgence rather than recognizing it as an essential aspect of integrated mastery. As this habit strengthens, you'll notice increased vitality and resilience. The body, acknowledged as an intelligent partner rather than a mere tool, functions more optimally. Energy previously wasted in unnecessary tension becomes available for purposeful action. The mind, grounded in physical awareness, becomes less susceptible to anxiety and rumination. The eighth habit builds upon this foundation of physical integration to address an essential yet increasingly rare quality, the discipline of solitude. In a world that equates constant connectivity with success and relevance, deliberate periods of aloneness become necessary for maintaining psychological sovereignty and depth of character.
Solitude differs from mere isolation or loneliness, where isolation feels imposed and loneliness connotes suffering. True solitude represents a chosen state of being alone with yourself, comfortable in your own company, content with your own thoughts, complete without external validation or distraction. Most avoid solitude because they fear what they might find in their own uninterrupted company. Discomfort, boredom, or anxiety often arise when external stimulation is removed. Yet these very experiences, when faced consciously rather than avoided, become gateways to deeper self-knowledge and authentic presence. Begin with short periods of intentional solitude, perhaps just 30 minutes weekly. Find a place where interruptions are unlikely. Leave all unnecessary technology behind. Bring nothing to read, watch, or otherwise occupy your attention. Simply be with yourself, allowing whatever arises to emerge naturally in your awareness. This practice requires no specific activity or achievement. You need not meditate formally, though you may if it serves you. You need not think productive thoughts or reach particular insights. The value lies in the simple yet profound experience of being completely present with yourself without distraction or performance. As comfort with solitude increases, gradually extend these periods. Some find an hour daily serves them well, others benefit from longer retreats, perhaps a day monthly or several days yearly. The duration matters less than the quality of presence you bring and the regularity of the practice. In solitude, aspects of yourself typically obscured by activity and interaction become visible. You may notice thought patterns that normally operate below conscious awareness. You may recognize emotions carried but not acknowledged. You may contact deeper values and aspirations typically drowned out by external demands and expectations. Some resist this practice because modern culture treats aloneness as failure or punishment rather than opportunity. Others resist because their sense of identity depends heavily on others' responses and validation. Yet genuine sovereignty, creativity, and wisdom emerge most readily in the fertile ground of solitude. As this habit strengthens, you'll find yourself less dependent on external stimulation and validation. The capacity to be comfortably alone translates into greater authenticity in relationships, as your interactions become chosen connections rather than desperate attempts to escape aloneness. Creativity flourishes as original thought requires freedom from constant input and influence. The ninth habit addresses how you relate to the inevitable challenges life presents. Approaching challenges as a warrior. This doesn't imply aggression or violence, but rather the disciplined courage to face difficulty directly, to persevere when easier paths beckon, and to maintain dignity and principle even when circumstances test your resolve. The warrior archetype appears in virtually all wisdom traditions, representing not the glorification of conflict, but the nobility of facing life's battles with integrity and skill. The true warrior fights not against others but against unconsciousness, fear, and the tendency to choose comfort over growth. Most people relate to challenges as burdens to be avoided or endured. They resist difficulties, complain about them, or try to escape them through distraction or denial. This approach guarantees suffering, as resistance creates tension while avoidance prevents growth and resolution. The warrior's approach begins with acceptance of challenge as inevitable and valuable. Difficulties aren't punishments or signs of failure but necessary encounters that develop strength, wisdom, and compassion. The question becomes not why is this happening to me, but what can I learn from this and how can I respond skillfully? When challenges arise, whether in relationships, work, health, or any domain, breathe consciously and remember your larger purpose. Distinguish between what can be changed through action and what must be accepted. Where action is possible, take it without hesitation or complaint. Where acceptance is required, yield completely rather than engaging in futile resistance. This habit requires discernment between surrender and resignation. Resignation comes from weakness and leads to bitterness. Surrender comes from strength and leads to peace. The resigned person gives up because they see no alternative. The surrendered person chooses acceptance because they recognize it as the wisest response to what cannot be changed. The warrior path also involves clear recognition of your current limitations without being defined by them. When you reach the boundary of your knowledge, skill, or courage, acknowledge it honestly. Then work systematically to expand that boundary rather than pretending capacity you don't yet possess or accepting limitation as permanent identity. Some resist this practice because our culture often portrays victims as morally superior to warriors. Complaining about circumstances earns sympathy, while facing challenges directly and taking responsibility for one's response sometimes triggers resentment in others still caught in victim mentality. Others resist because the warrior path requires relinquishing excuses and justifications that protect the ego while limiting growth. As this habit strengthens, you'll find yourself approaching difficulties with increasing calm and effectiveness. Challenges that once seemed overwhelming become manageable. Recovery from setbacks occurs more quickly. The gap between adversity and positive response gradually narrows until skillful action becomes your natural first response rather than an achievement requiring effort. The 10th and final habit both completes and transcends the previous 9 daily acts of selfless service. While the earlier habits establish sovereignty over your internal state and skillful relationship with your environment, this culminating practice directs your developing mastery toward the benefit of others. Authentic power finds its highest expression not in control or achievement but in contribution. The most fulfilled human beings are not those who accumulate the most possessions, experiences, or accomplishments, but those who discover how their unique gifts can address genuine needs in the world around them. Most people think of service as occasional volunteering or charitable donation. While these have value, the habit of daily selfless service integrates giving into the fabric of ordinary life. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to contribute. Every conversation a chance to increase rather than diminish the well-being of others. Begin with simple, concrete actions. Perhaps allow someone to go ahead of you in line. Perhaps offer a genuine compliment with no expectation of return. Perhaps listen fully to someone who needs to be heard. Perhaps complete a task that benefits others without seeking credit or recognition. The key lies in the intention behind the action rather than its magnitude. A small gesture performed with complete presence and genuine care creates more positive impact than larger actions done with mixed motives or distracted attention. Focus on the quality of giving rather than quantity or recognition. As the practice deepens, you'll discover increasing opportunities for meaningful contribution. You'll notice needs previously overlooked. You'll recognize how your specific strengths and abilities can address particular situations. You'll find yourself naturally oriented toward increasing collective well-being rather than merely protecting personal interests. Some resist this practice because they fear depletion or exploitation. They believe they must secure their own position before helping others, not recognizing that appropriate service energizes rather than exhausts. Others resist because they've been taught that self-interest alone motivates human behavior, not understanding that contribution to others' well-being actually fulfills our deepest nature. As this habit strengthens, you'll experience the paradox at the heart of all wisdom traditions. What you give returns to you multiplied, not through calculation or cosmic bookkeeping, but through the natural resonance of consciousness. Service performed without expectation of reward generates a quality of satisfaction that no self-focused achievement can produce. These 10 habits, practiced consistently, create transformation not through dramatic intervention, but through the cumulative power of small daily choices. Like water gradually shaping stone, they reform your consciousness to express its inherent clarity, compassion, and capability. The morning stillness grounds you in sovereignty over your attention. The conscious breathing maintains this sovereignty throughout the day. The evening reflection integrates experiences to prevent psychological accumulation. The mindful consumption protects your mental space from unnecessary disturbance. The deep listening creates authentic connection with others and yourself. The conscious response transforms reactivity into chosen action. The physical awareness integration embodies wisdom rather than merely conceptualizing it. The discipline of solitude develops self-sufficiency and depth. The warrior approach to challenges builds resilience and dignity. The selfless service fulfills your highest purpose and deepest nature. Together, these practices address the totality of human experience, inner and outer, individual and relational, receptive and active. They require no special circumstances or elaborate preparations. They can be practiced regardless of your age, background, beliefs, or current situation. They cost nothing but attention, yet their value exceeds any material wealth. Begin where you are. Choose one habit that resonates most strongly and practice it daily for 1 month before adding another. Allow integration to occur naturally rather than forcing multiple changes simultaneously. Trust the process, especially when results aren't immediately visible. Remember that transformation follows the pattern of bamboo growth, developing strong roots before visible emergence. The way of small habits contradicts our culture's emphasis on dramatic intervention and immediate results. It requires patience, consistency, and faith in processes that unfold according to their own natural timing rather than our preferences or expectations. Yet the results, while gradual in emergence, prove far more lasting than changes forced through willpower alone. Each moment offers a new beginning. Each breath provides fresh opportunity. The past, with all its patterns and conditioning, holds power only to the extent that you remain unconscious of its influence. These 10 small habits, practiced with presence and persistence, gradually free you from this unconscious bondage and reveal the limitless potential that has always been your true nature. The transformation you seek has already begun. The awareness reading or hearing these words is itself the awakening of consciousness to its own nature and possibilities. Trust this awareness. Follow where it leads. Allow it to guide you toward practices that will serve your particular journey at this specific moment. The smallest actions performed with complete presence contain the seeds of the greatest transformation. This truth contradicts everything our hurried world teaches us, yet it has been confirmed by the wise throughout history and across cultures. Now it awaits your own confirmation through direct experience. Your life tomorrow will be the result of the small choices you make today. Choose with awareness. Choose with courage. Choose with the knowledge that each conscious choice creates ripples extending far beyond what you can currently see or imagine. In this way, through these simple daily habits, you become both the artist and the masterpiece of your own existence.